Saludos a toda la afición de Lucha Libre Online. Este que les habla es Michael Morales Torres, integrante del equipo de Lucha Libre Online. Gente, y miren el pedazo de invitado que tenemos especial en la tarde de hoy para ustedes. De Los Ángeles, California, para el mundo. Él es mitad surcoreano, mitad alemán. También prácticamente una leyenda dentro de esta industria. Un hombre que ha estado en WWE, TNA, Ring of Honor, WCW, you name it. Él ha estado en todas las empresas. Jimmy Wang Yang llega aquí por primera vez a Lucha Libre Online. Jimmy, it is an honor, man, for us to have you as our guest. How are you doing today?
Hola, amigo. Me llamo Jimmy Yang. Muy bien. ¿Y tú?
Yeah, todo bien por acá. And now Jimmy Wang Yang speaks Spanish. And why did I conduct this interview in English? I don't know, man.
Yeah, poquito español, so.
But we're really, really happy. Estamos muy felices de tenerte por acá. We're really happy to have you here as our guest. And I wanted to start this interview asking you, like, we've known the pathway you built during your career, and suddenly we didn't saw any of Jimmy Yang anywhere. And suddenly pro wrestling in the area with Doug Gallows, wrestling for the kiddos. Like, we've saw you performing in a few stages back inside the pro wrestling industry. So what brought you back inside this industry once again?
So basically Jazzy Yang, my baby girl. Really I never, a lot of people's like, oh, Jimmy Yang retired from wrestling. So I didn't retire from wrestling. I just had to pump the brakes a little bit and be a dad. You know, I had now she's 18 years old, but I had to take care of my baby. Wrestling, takes you away from your house, takes you away from home. I needed to be at home. I needed to take care of my baby while she was growing up. So that's why I started the party bus business, and I didn't retire from wrestling, just pumped the brakes. She graduated a few weeks ago, and now she's into professional wrestling, and now I'm back, so yeah.
Really happy to hear that. I'll translate this briefly to Spanish. ¿Por qué no hemos visto a Jimmy Yang o a Jimmy Wang Yang en la industria de la lucha libre? Él dice, yo no estoy retirado. Yo le puse un poquito de pausa o le bajamos la velocidad porque tiene una familia, tiene su bebé, su hija, ya acaba de cumplir 18 años, acaba de graduarse, así que la felicitamos hace unas semanas atrás. Y la industria como que te aleja un poco de tu familia, de tu hogar, y él quería estar en su casa, quería estar con su hija, con su familia, y por eso es que abre el negocio de los party bus, por eso cambia un poquito el concepto de lo que él estaba haciendo con su vida para poder dedicarle todo a su hija. Let's talk about Jazzy. She's following her dad's footsteps. Do you expect this to happen?
Kind of, but, Jazzy has always been around, a lot of fancy stuff. She got to, she's been at Raw, SmackDown. She's been to Japan, all this kind of stuff. So she's like, oh my God, this is like the coolest profession ever. I get to travel and perform. What kind of doesn't surprise me, but when she was a sophomore in high school, as dad, I was wondering what she was going to do after high school. And she's, said, hey, what do you want to do after high school? College or whatever, right? And she says, hey, Dad, I want to be a professional wrestler. It's like, oh, shit. But, she's been around it and seeing how fun it is. Like, I don't blame her. Like, at first, I was a little hesitant of her being a professional wrestler. But me personally, I've got to travel the world. I've been around the world 20 times, all 50 states, Mexico City, Barcelona, and it's the greatest time of my life. So I'm like, why would I not want that for my daughter? So if you want to be a professional wrestler, I'm going to help you as much as I can and teach you everything I know. And hopefully you get to do half the stuff that I've got to do, so.
I'll translate.
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to translate this to Spanish. This is such a sweetheart story from Jimmy. Jimmy dice, su hija ya estaba en sophomore year, estaba segundo año de high school, y le dice, bueno, papá, papá le pregunta, ¿qué vas a hacer? ¿Vas a ir a la universidad? ¿You're going to college? ¿Vas a ir a trabajar? ¿Qué quieres hacer después de la universidad? I want to be a professional wrestler. ¿Quieres ser un luchador profesional? Y yo dice, oh, shit. Como que, ¿por qué motivo pasa esto? Pero como ella dijo, como él dice, la nena llegó a ir a Raw, llegó a ir a SmackDown, fue con papá a Japón, lo veía en los stages y decía como que contra papá, lo veía luchando, lo veía en todos los stages del mundo y decía, yo quiero esto para mí. Y como dice Jimmy, yo he viajado, corrido todos los 50 estados de Estados Unidos, he viajado el mundo entero, Ciudad de México, Barcelona, todo el mundo, y me ha ido bien, amo lo que hago. ¿Por qué motivo no querer eso para su hija? Así que definitivamente lo respaldó. One thing is you being inside the ring, and another thing completely different is to have your baby girl inside a pro wrestling ring. So as a father, not as Jimmy Wang Yang, the wrestler, but as Jimmy the father, how do you feel watching your daughter performing live for the first time?
So the first time that she performed is when she was 15 years old.
Oh, God.
In Tokyo, Japan, in front of 5,000 people. But what was crazy is that she was like, yeah, whatever, like, yeah, I'll debut in Japan, like no big deal. So during the match, it was me and Kaz Hayashi versus Shannon Moore and Nozawa, and we had a spot for her in the match. So I get knocked down off the ring apron. She jumps up to get the tag, and I fall down, and I'm so nervous and everything. So I get up and I'm peeking on the apron like this, She gets the tag and she comes in and boom, boom, and I'm like, ah, she's doing so good. I was like, boom, and then she hit the head scissors, and everything was so awesome. But like, she's an athlete. She's played basketball, volleyball, softball, and I've watched her in every sport. But when I saw her beating up Shannon Moore, tattooing Shannon Moore, I was like, it was like the most nerve-wracking dad moment of my life, So it was like a lot different watching a basketball game and then seeing your baby girl throw forearms and head scissors in front of 5,000 people in Tokyo, Japan at 15 years old. It's crazy,
It was unexpected. I'll translate this. Su hija, su bebé, debuta a los 15 años. Nada grande, no biggie, en Japón, en Tokio, ante más de 5,000 personas. La arena llena de capacidad. Papá en su esquina, Shannon Moore al otro lado. Y de momento atacan a papá. La nena agarra el relevo. Papá está a la parte de abajo del apron, pero mirando a ver qué está haciendo la nena al otro lado. Y de momento le da un chingadazo, un antebrazo completo a Shannon Moore en la boca. Y el papá está como que, ¡ah, esa es mi hija, coño! Estaba bien contento. ¿A quién no? Y la nena no estaba nerviosa. Ella no tenía nervios, era como que, sí, voy a debutar en Japón, estaba cómoda, así que ya era una natural en esto y tener la oportunidad de no tan solo verla en vivo, sino de que tu primera lucha sea con tu papá en tu esquina, definitivamente es algo bueno. You're also working something with her, and I mentioned it earlier today, that's Wrestling for Kiddos, a non-profit organization you and your daughter, well, technically your daughter created, but you've been helping her with that. What can you tell us about Wrestling for Kiddos?
So Wrestling for Kiddos, my belief, sports are very important, right? Like if I didn't have sports, like if I didn't play sports when I was a youth, I would have never went to school, right? Only reason I went to school was to play sports. And like nowadays, sports fees are crazy. Like it's so crazy, so expensive. And another story, like I grew up very poor. Like I grew up on ramen and food stamps, right? And I didn't get to play a few years because my family couldn't afford the sports fees. And that kind of broke my heart, whatever, broke my heart. But like, and if my parents had to pay for the high school sports fees, I would have never played. I would never play sports. I couldn't afford it, right? But sports are very important. Only reason I went to school is to play sports. It taught me work ethic, you know, I had to work hard to play. I learned teamwork, the working with others, you know, like responsibility, like keeping a track of my cleats and my uniform, my everything that you need. It's like, I think sports are very important. And nowadays, sports fees are so outrageous. So what we're doing is trying to raise money to pay for the kids' sports fees, where they can learn these essential life lessons through sports. So that's what Wrestling for the Kiddos is about.
Excellent project. I'll translate this to Spanish. Jimmy cuenta su historia de cuando él era un niño. Sus papás, obviamente, mamá alemana, papá surcoreano. Cambió un poquito la cosa. Jimmy era muy pobre. Creció una niñez muy pobre, en donde solamente comían, como él dice, ramen y vivían de food stamps, de cupones de comida. Y si no es por el deporte en la escuela, Jimmy no hubiese ido a la escuela, no le interesaba. O sea, creció una niña difícil, un proyecto difícil. Lo único que lo motivaba a ir a la escuela es los deportes. Y entonces, si él hubiese tenido que pagar por sus deportes, lamentablemente no hubiese ido porque no podían costearlo. Así es que nace el proyecto Wrestling for the Kiddos, en donde ellos, su hija, Jazzy, y él, Jimmy, pues recaudan dinero y todo lo que ellos ganan, todo lo que ellos trabajan, lo utilizan para brindárselo a los niños de comunidades marginadas, de los lugares más pobres, de los projects, de los ghettos, de los lugares pobres de Estados Unidos, para que ellos también tengan la oportunidad de ir a la escuela, de tener su oportunidad de estar en un equipo de deporte. Como él dice, eso me enseñó a mí ética de trabajo, me enseñó a mantener los uniformes limpios, me enseñó a enfocarme, el respeto, el valor de las cosas. Y él quiere que los niños también que son de comunidades pobres o marginadas en Estados Unidos tengan la oportunidad de hacerlo. Así que todos los que puedan hacer una donación pueden hacerlo a través de PayPal en wrestlingforthekiddos@gmail.com, wrestlingforthekiddos@gmail.com para cualquier donación. No importa cuán grande o tan pequeña, siempre es bienvenida para hacer una buena causa, para poder ayudar a estos niños a tener la oportunidad de crecer en los deportes y de tener la oportunidad de mantenerse enfocados en el camino correcto. Así que toda donación será bien recibida a través de PayPal en wrestlingforthekiddos@gmail.com. Va a aparecerle también acá abajo en la descripción ese enlace. También pueden seguirlos en Facebook como Wrestling for the Kiddos en Facebook, y ahí pueden encontrar mucha más información al respecto de este proyecto. Man, I never expected, I mean, we saw Jimmy Wang Yang, the party animal. The party was the guy with the ropes. It's like we never expected him to be such a sweetheart. It's really good to see you doing this kind of work. I admire and respect for you before, and I have more admiration and respect for you now because of that, sir. So thank you for what you're doing for the communities. Going back into the pro wrestling industry as well, you'll have a match. You'll be back in pro wrestling area when today, Friday, July 2nd, Pro Wrestling Lariat. It's going to be a really interesting card. We have Doc Gallows, formerly known as Festus or as Luke Gallows. It's going to be Curt Hawkins, now known as Brian Myers. Luther, among many other guys, are going to be there. It's
mi amigo, Chavo Guerrero.
Chavo Guerrero también va a estar por allí. D'Lo Brown. There are many people are going to be there. It's Collision Course. Tickets available, boletos disponibles en www.dlpwg.com or dlpwg.com for tickets. Va a ser como lo habíamos mencionado, ese es el evento de Pro Wrestling Lariat. Y Jimmy Wang Yang va a estar presente, al igual que su hija Jazzy. How do you feel having the opportunity to perform once again? The pandemic has been tough on everyone, but things are getting, fortunately, back to normal. How do you feel having the opportunity to perform once again in this event, specifically with your daughter?
So even going with the pandemic, right? Like the party bus business took it was really hard during the pandemic. So what happened is during the pandemic, I had a wrestling school in Cincinnati, Ohio. And me and Jazzy just trained almost every day. She is badass. I'll tell you, Jazzy Yang is ready. I've missed wrestling and I can't wait to start performing again. It's, you know, pro wrestling has gave me the biggest high, you know, in my life. And I'm like, reaching for that high to get it again. And, you know, tonight is the first time I'm back. and it's going to be Yang time. It's going to be Jazzy time. And it's time, you know, so.
Perfect. Jimmy nos cuenta que debido a la pandemia, todo lo que es el wrestling industry, pues lamentablemente bajó un poco. También su negocio del Party Bus se vio afectado por esto. Es parte de la pandemia, es parte del COVID, afectó la economía de todo el mundo. ¿Y qué él hacía en su tiempo? Pues él tiene una escuela de lucha libre en Ohio, en Cincinnati, y todos los días entrenaba con su hija, con Jessie, como él dice, Jessie es fuerte, o sea, Jessie es dura. Esa muchacha no se quita y tener la oportunidad de regresar a la industria de la lucha libre es como que, ok, estaba buscando nuevamente ese high, ese punto alto que yo tuve en mi carrera, tratar de mantenerme en forma y todo, y una cosa llevó a la otra y de momento ya está a través de los cuadriláteros con su hija teniendo la oportunidad de competir y nuevamente hoy, viernes 2 de julio, es que él vuelve nuevamente a los cuadriláteros en Libre Pro Wrestling, así que le agradecemos enormemente que haya dedicado su tiempo para estar aquí a prácticamente a minutos de su encuentro. Pueden conseguir los boletos en www.dlpwg.com para boletos en todas partes, así que hay que verlo, hay que ver a Jimmy de vuelta en los cuadriláteros y a Jassy, hay que echarles un ojo. Jimmy, you've been everywhere. You've been on WCW, Ring of Honor, TNA, but there's a particular moment I want to discuss. I mean, you were part of the WCW last years or last months, but you made your debut in a pretty particular way with Jamie-san, actually known as Jamie Noble, and Kaz Hayashi. You were brought by Jimmy Hart, the Mouse of the South, to be part of the company. And you made your TV debut in a pay-per-view. How do you feel? You know, it can't be, you can't get any higher than debuting in a pay-per-view. So how was that moment for you?
So, and everything with me, you know, happened so fast. Like, I'm the youngest wrestler ever to sign to WCW. I signed my first contract in June of 1999. I turned 18 in May.
Yeah. 18 in 1 month.
Yeah. And personally, you know, I was such a big fan of wrestling. I got signed. Few months later, they fly me to actually WCW Saturday night. It wasn't a pay-per-view, but it was a Saturday night taping. At 18, personally, I didn't know how to travel. I didn't know how to check in at the airport. I didn't know how to check in a hotel, anything like that. And then I go into the taping in Amherst, Massachusetts, and I see all these wrestlers. El Dandy, Beyond 4 and 5. I'm like, oh, look, El Dandy, Beyond 4 or 5, Chavo and all the Armstrongs, everything. I'm such a mark, and being a fan, I'm like, oh my God, this is crazy. And then they put me in the match with the Demon, Del Torboard, and I'm just like, what is going on? You know, so it was so nerve-wracking, so crazy, exciting. There's just so much emotion going into doing a national TV match, you know, and it was just unbelievable, right? It's unbelievable, awesome, crazy, like being so young, you know, it was an awesome moment. You know, so.
I'll translate this. Jimmy cuenta que él es el luchador más joven en firmar con WCW. Firma a los 18 años con un mes. Él cumplió 18 en mayo, en May, y en junio ya lo firmaron. Entonces, de momento no sabía ni cómo viajar, no sabía cómo hacer las cosas, no sabía cómo hacer un check-in en el aeropuerto. Y ok, ya lo logró, lo resolvimos, llegamos. El Dandy. Villanos 4 y 5. Todos mis héroes estaban a mi alrededor y estoy evitando estallar de emoción por dentro y de momento me ponen una lucha televisada en WCW contra dos personas que admiro de igual forma y es como, anda, para el carajo, esto se prendió esta cosa, como diríamos acá en Puerto Rico. Pero Jimmy tuvo la oportunidad de crear ese impacto, de ser el luchador más joven y para un muchachito en aquella época, tener la oportunidad de crecer de esa manera simplemente fue increíble. You were with WCW until, unfortunately, WWF purchased the company. Who gave you the notice that, you know, the company was being sold to the enemy?
So we all there was always the last 2 weeks was rumors. Who bought it? Eric Bischoff, whoever, WWE, but I didn't think WWE was going to buy WCW. So the last WCW Nitro was in Panama City. I'm 19 years old on spring break. So my friends came down there and they were there for the week before the show. And I was a 19-year-old professional wrestler during Panama City spring break. Yeah, so I had a good time. And then finally we go to the shows, to the show, and all of a sudden I walk in and all the WWE stuff's right there. I was like,
God.
oh, what happened? You know, WWE bought WCW. Then they said, okay, we have a talent meeting. So we all went in the room, all the talent, and all of a sudden Shane McMahon walks in and Bruce Pritchard and Briscoe. And it was like, you know, it was like a kind of so real moment, like, oh man, we just got bought from WWE, Shane McMahon. And it was just such a shock what was going on, you know, but spring break partying with my boys, go to work and see all of a sudden WWE bought WCW. Shane walks in. But that night I turned into a huge fan. I'm always a big fan, but like I was watching the show and that's when they did the simulcast, Vince and Shane, and I'm watching from the crowd. You know, I'd sneak out in the crowd and watch it. And I was like, oh my God, this is the coolest storyline in the world. Vince McMahon versus Shane, WWE versus WCW. And I found out that day they took my contract. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to be part of this. You know, this is like awesome, you know. But then after the show, it got real sad afterwards because I'm being so young, not understanding what's going on. But a lot of people lost their jobs that night. So after the show's over, walking back, and there's people, you know, crying and hugging, and it's like, oh crap, they just basically killed a company and like hundreds of people's livelihoods and families and bills. And it was kind of like, it was a crazy week. Just say it was a crazy week in my life.
I'll translate this. Le pregunto a Jimmy por el momento en que WCW fue comprada por WWE, si se esperaba, si no, cómo él se enteró de la noticia. Bueno, Panama City, él tenía 19 años, Spring Break, él estaba con sus muchachos, with his boys, vamos a party, vámonos de fiesta, vamos a pasarla bien. Habían rumores de quién la compró, Eric Bischoff, quién rayos compró la empresa, y de momento, vamos para el show, después de party, después de la fiesta y toda la cosa de Spring Break en Panama City, pasándola bien, me siento por allí, WWF en todos los billboards. ¿Qué caramba acaba de pasar aquí? Oh shit, WWF compró WCW y de momento entra el camerino Shane McMahon, Bruce Pritchard y Gerald Briscoe y es como que anda pa'l carajo, esto se acaba de volver real. Sale Shane afuera, hace el anuncio, él lo ve desde el público y fue como Vince contra Shane, esta es la mejor storyline de todos los tiempos y yo voy a ser parte de esto. Compraron su contrato, luego entendió la gravedad de la situación, de que muchas personas se quedaron sin trabajo, todos llorando y abrazándose, personas que perdieron sus trabajos, que no podían pagar sus biles y la cosa se volvió, vamos a decirlo de esa manera, real. You were part of WWF on the developmental system. You went out, you went to All Japan, you went to TNA, you went to WWE again, then TNA. Like, you've been everywhere, went to WWE one last time for like 4 or 5 years. And then after that, you went back to TNA as well. Like, it's like your life has been a roller coaster ride, man. What was your favorite moment inside the pro wrestling industry? Obviously, you work loving with your daughter, but before your daughter even entered to the picture, you were a wrestler for more than a decade. Like, what was your favorite or favorites moment that you can recall today?
So my favorite moment in my career, because I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, and I grew up on WCW. I didn't have cable. I only had 2 channels. I had TBS and PBS, right? And TBS had Braves baseball and WCW Saturday Night Wrestling. And I watched it religiously. I watched every Saturday night, 6:05. So the biggest moment in my life or my wrestling career was that first TV taping in Amherst, Massachusetts. They said, and then WCW Saturday Night. This is what I grew up on. My first match, I'm officially a WCW wrestler. And then I got to wrestle the Demon Del Toro in my first WCW Saturday Night. I was the main event. Yeah, so, but like if I only did that one match and then everything else, I would have been happy with wrestling because that was my goal. I didn't grow up on Nitro. I didn't grow up on Raw or SmackDown or WrestleMania or Starrcade or all that other stuff. I grew up loving WCW Saturday Night, and the first time my TV debut was for WCW Saturday Night. I got to be the main event, and that was awesome. That's a moment I'll never forget, and the biggest moment at that time of my life. So.
I'll translate this. ¿Cuál es el momento favorito de la carrera de Jimmy? Sencillo. Esa noche él creció viendo WCW Saturday Night porque él creció en Atlanta, comunidades pobres, habían dos canales, PBS y TBS. TBS por la noche, los sábados, daban WCW Saturday Night, así que sus momentos favoritos en su primera lucha, en un evento estelar, en WCW Saturday Night, viajando a Massachusetts. Él dice, si yo me hubiese retirado después de ese momento, ya yo hubiese vivido feliz porque esa era mi meta. Yo quería llegar a WCW Saturday Night, que fue lo que yo crecí viendo y admirando. Así que ese fue su momento favorito. Pueden seguir a Jimmy Wang Yang en sus redes sociales, específicamente en Instagram, como @JimmyWYang, @JimmyWYang. Ahí pueden encontrar más información de todo. Wrestling for the Kiddos en Facebook, y para donaciones, como les mencionamos, wrestlingforthekiddos@gmail.com por PayPal. También sigan a su hija en sus redes sociales como Yasi Yang. The Last Dragon está disponible también en todas las redes sociales. Échele un ojo, un excelente talento. Jimmy, it's been an absolute honor, sir, to have you here as our guest. Last but not least, what message can you send to all the fans out there, especially in Latin America? They know Jimmy. They know what you're doing. They know what you've done during your career. But to put their eyes in your biggest achievement, your daughter, like, you must be such a proud you are a proud father. So what message can you send to all the fans in Latin America to, yes, watch Jimmy Wang Yang, but to watch Yasi Yang as well?
Yeah, so I'm gonna give you a little secret, So me, Jazzy Yang, just had a meeting with Mickey James.
Oh God, that's 3 letters. Should I spell it or should I leave it to their imagination?
Yeah, so whatever you want to do is fine, but there's something happening at the end of August for a company.
Oh wow.
A history moment for that company, and just stay tuned and make sure you check out Jazzy Yang, Jimmy Yang. I love my Latinos. I love Mexico, Spain. I love all the countries, and I love me. Yeah, love me some Spanish. Yeah, but just stay tuned and help me help the kiddos. Wrestling for the kiddos, and that's what I'm doing. I'm wrestling for my kid and also all the kiddos out there. So help me help the kiddos. I'm Jimmy Wang Yang. I'm your boy. Giddy up. Yeehaw!
I'll translate this before we go. Jimmy dice que tuvo un meeting con Mickey James, con Yasi. Algo va a pasar a finales de agosto. Un evento más histórico. Tal vez el primer pay-per-view femenino en la historia del NWA. Veremos a Yasi Yang por allí. ¿Qué pasará? Hay que estar pendientes, hay que seguirlos en sus redes sociales. Ayudemos a Jimmy con Wrestling for the Kiddos. Como él dice, ayúdenos a ayudar. Él lucha por sus hijos, pero él también lucha por los hijos de todos. Así que ayudémoslo a ayudar, como él dice. Jimmy, thank you very much for your time. Always wishing you success in your career and in your daughter's career as well, and both of your personal lives. And thank you very much for your time, sir.
Thank you, Michael. And luchalibre.com. Yeehaw!
Perfecto, y este fue Jimmy Wang Yang y Michael Morales Torres para Lucha Libre Online, la marca número 1 de Pro Wrestling y Combat Sports en español.